It happened on a Tuesday. Not a Friday, not end of quarter, not even after a bad quarter. Just a random Tuesday, like Betrayal decided it didn't need a calendar anymore. We were sitting in the conference room of Ryden and Company, the construction firm my grandfather started with his bare hands and a rusted pickup truck. My name's Carter Ryden, 35, eldest son, and for the past 12 years I've been the one keeping the walls from caving in, literally and figuratively. I ran the projects, hired the people, dealt with every client meltdown, every blown permit, every midnight call from a site manager who couldn't read a blueprint if it bit him. I was the steady hand in a family of flinchers. So when my father, the man I'd worked shoulder to shoulder with since I was 23, told me I was no longer fit to lead, I didn't even react. Not at first. The words felt like drywall dust. Dry. Unremarkable. Almost fake. I looked across the table. My younger brother Colby was already grinning like he'd just signed a sneaker deal. Fresh tanned from his latest entrepreneur retreat, collar popped like he thought we were still in college. He'd failed 2 startups, burned through $500,000 of Dad's money, and still thought vision meant talking fast over PowerPoint slides. Dad signed the papers, slid them across the table like it was some minor redistribution of printer ink. 75% will go to Colby. It's time to let fresh leadership step in. I didn't yell. Didn't argue. Didn't ask why the man who'd missed every Monday meeting for 5 years was suddenly qualified to lead. I just stood, walked to my office, and packed my things. Left a note on the desk that said, "Let the leader take care of it now." And then I walked out. Not with vengeance. Not with rage. Just a quiet, focused calm. Because they had no idea what I'd been building. And they sure as hell didn't know what was coming next. The last thing I took from the office was my coffee mug. Not because it meant anything, it didn't. It was chipped and ugly. Said Ryden and Son on it back when we still thought the and Son part meant something permanent. What I left behind. That mattered. I left behind 3 active project boards no one but me knew how to read. Budget forecasts I'd built from scratch. Subcontractor rotations. Site-specific permit sequences that had taken years to perfect. All of it tied together in one system, the one they never asked about because it never broke. Colby once called my spreadsheets overkill. Said we should be using some Silicon Valley app instead. I told him systems built by someone who doesn't care won't save you when a steel shipment goes missing on a Thursday. He laughed. Said I worried too much. He was going to learn the hard way. The first call came 2 days after I left. Jen from billing. "Hey, sorry to bother you, but do you know where the invoice codes for Project Ironclad are?" I told her I didn't work there anymore. Second call was from Marcus, our lead foreman. The west site stalled. City inspector flagged something about the structural bracing? No idea what Colby's talking about, he just nodded and changed the subject. I nodded too, even though he couldn't see it. "I'm not with Ryden and Company anymore, Marcus," I said. "You'll have to ask the new leadership." Click. I wasn't trying to destroy the company. I just wasn't going to keep saving people who told me I didn't belong. Instead, I went home, cleaned my boots, opened my laptop, and pulled up the thing I had been building for years. Not a backup plan. Not a revenge scheme. A legacy, mine. One that didn't carry anyone else's name but my own. They always thought I was a grunt with a calculator. That I just liked order, like neat columns and construction checklists. What they didn't understand, what they never tried to understand, was that Ryden and Company functioned because of the system I'd spent the last decade designing in silence. It started as a workaround, too many dropped balls, missed calls, invoices lost between email threads. I started building something better. Piece by piece. Site by site. I called it Slate, a proprietary ops system that mapped every project phase, every vendor, every inspection deadline. Budget triggers. Safety alerts. Crew rotations based on strengths and failure trends. No, it wasn't pretty. But it worked. And I didn't build it on company time. Not really. Nights. Early mornings. Weekends. While Colby was off networking at rooftop bars and Dad was golfing with clients who only half remembered our names, I was quietly building the future of construction management. On my own server. My own code. My own IP. Slate was mine. And now, free from Ryden and Company, I was finally allowed to use it for someone who actually valued it. That someone showed up the same week. Dahlia West from Haven Group, a longtime rival firm, sharper than most and twice as ruthless. She called once, years ago, asking if we'd ever consider selling our back-end tools. I'd said no. This time, I called her. 10 minutes into the conversation, she said, "You're not calling as a Ryden?" "Nope," I said. "Not anymore." A pause. Then, "Let's meet." By Friday, I had a consulting offer, competitive salary, light hours, full autonomy. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the first time someone looked at me and saw value, not family obligation. And that, more than any paycheck, felt like justice. You'd think walking away from your own family's company would feel like pulling out an anchor. Something loud, violent, final. It wasn't. It was quiet. That first Monday morning, I didn't wake up to 20 unread emails or a site manager cursing down the line. I woke up to birds, to the smell of coffee, to a strange feeling I hadn't known in years, stillness. It was unnerving. I sat on the porch with a notebook and tried to remember the last time I'd had a day that wasn't consumed by fires. Literal or figurative. 12 years I'd given them. No vacations longer than 3 days. No holidays without calls. No weekends without field visits. I'd put off getting married. Postponed surgeries. Skipped a funeral once, my college roommates. Told myself it was necessary, that Ryden and company couldn't run without me. Turns out I was right. By Wednesday, I started getting texts from former clients. Hey man, who do we talk to now about the Kellerman extension? Is it true you left? Carter, please tell me this is temporary. I didn't respond. I wasn't angry. I wasn't gloating. But I wasn't their fixer anymore. Colby apparently had tried to streamline client accounts by merging them into a new CRM platform. Trouble was, half those clients didn't even use email for major decisions. They needed phone calls, site visits, handshakes. That's what I'd built, not just a company, but trust. And that doesn't migrate to software. Dahlia's team had already given me access to their client portfolio. Clean, focused, high-end contracts with zero margin for error. I'd spend the rest of the week reviewing their bottlenecks and loading Slate's frameworks into their ops model. Quietly, deliberately. No fanfare. No press release. Just a man doing the work he was born to do, finally on his own terms. The first real crack came 3 weeks after I left. A voicemail from a subcontractor I used to work with on high-rise projects. Dale Kettering, old-school guy, never emails, always leaves messages like he's dictating to a secretary in 1982. Carter, listen. I don't know what's going on over there, but Colby just told my team the West Tower's window installs are delayed 6 weeks. That wasn't in the timeline you gave us. Clients are spooked. I'm spooked. You were the only one keeping that job from flying off the rails. Call me if you can. I didn't. I played the message again, just to hear Dale say it out loud. You were the only one keeping the job from flying off the rails. That was the quiet truth they were all starting to see. Not because I told them. Because they were living it. By week 4, invoices were being disputed. Site supervisors were quitting mid-project. Inspectors were showing up unannounced and finding violations on basic code that hadn't been broken in 10 years. I know because word travels in our world. Fast. One night I got a text from Jen in accounting. They lost the Folsom bid. Said the margin was off by 11%. That's never happened before. You okay? I didn't reply. But I wasn't upset. I was fine. Better than fine. I was finally sleeping. Meanwhile, Dahlia's company, the one I was now consulting for, was soaring. We'd implemented Slate across 2 major sites in half the time it took Ryden and company to onboard Colby's digital vision. Clients were impressed. One even called it military precision without the ego. I'll admit that one made me smile. Colby had always joked I ran projects like a drill sergeant. Turns out that's what kept the whole thing from burning down. And now, with me gone, the fire had started. They just hadn't smelled the smoke yet. It's funny what you start to notice when the noise dies down. For years, I measured my days by how many fires I put out. Concrete delays. Material shortages. Clients who changed their minds halfway through a job and still expected us to finish on time. But now, I had mornings. Actual mornings. I'd sit in front of the mirror and not just brush my teeth while scrolling through job site reports. I'd sit, look, think. And for the first time in a long while, I started to wonder, who was I if I wasn't Ryden and company? I didn't miss the stress, the 4 a.m. wake-up calls, or the weekly family dinners where Colby played Golden Boy while I covered the tab. But I did miss building. Not walls. Not contracts. Trust. That's what construction really is, trust made physical. You say, this is what we'll build, and then you do it. You show up rain or shine. You listen. You deliver. That's what I'd been good at. Not the name. Not the logo. Me. Turns out when you strip away the family name and the office politics, what's left is a man who knows how to lead and doesn't need a title to do it. So I leaned in. I started working closer with Dahlia's top PMs, coaching them through logistics nightmares like I used to solve blindfolded. I rewired 3 of their site planning protocols. I rewrote 1 vendor contract so tightly the supplier called me to say he'd never seen numbers that fair and that firm at the same time. Dahlia took me to lunch. Said, "You're not just saving us time, you're changing the way we think." I nodded once. Sipped my coffee. Didn't say a word about Ryden and Company. Didn't have to. I was finally being valued for who I was, not where I came from. And that was worth more than every ounce of equity my father ever held back. 2 months after I walked away, Ryden and Company lost the Hawkins contract. That might not mean much to most people, but in our world, that job was gold-plated. City-funded redevelopment. Multi-phase. $15 million over 2 years. We'd been laying groundwork for that one since the final permits cleared under my management. When I left, it was 90% locked. And Colby lost it in 1 phone call. The client pulled out. Said the new leadership lacked clarity. Which is code for they didn't trust the guy in the chair. My phone rang the same day. I didn't recognize the number. "Carter? It's Thomas Hawkins." I stood in my kitchen, staring at the sunlight on my floor. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry about what happened over there. I thought your family had more sense." I thanked him. Said I understood. He paused. "If you ever go out on your own." "I'd be interested." If you ever go out on your own. That phrase stuck with me. He wasn't the first to say it. In fact, over the last few weeks, I'd had more than a dozen conversations that started with "you built that company" and ended with "you ever think about starting something of your own?" And I had thought about it. A lot. But something held me back. Maybe pride. Maybe caution. Maybe some stubborn part of me still waiting for my father to wake up and realize what he'd done. But that part? It was shrinking fast. Especially now that I knew how shaky the Ryden Foundation really was without me in it. And watching them trip over the very things I used to hold up with one hand? That didn't bring me joy. But it did bring clarity. Because you can't build a future on a lie. And Ryden and Company was a house built on my back. And now that I wasn't there, it was sinking fast. They didn't expect me to show up at the Builders Association dinner. In fact, I'm pretty sure my father had to physically stop himself from choking on his wine when he saw me walk in. I wasn't there to make a scene. I wore a plain navy suit. No flashy entrance. No entourage. Just me and a guest pass from Dahlia, who'd been asked to present an award for project innovation using the Slate system I'd built. Colby was already there. Hair slicked back like a game show host. Laughing too loud, like he'd earned the right to be in the room. The moment he spotted me, his smile flickered. Just for a second. That half second of recognition you can't fake. The one that says he's not gone. And we are not okay. I nodded. Didn't say a word. Dahlia's speech came near the end. Short, polished, but sharp. She thanked her team. Then added, "We also couldn't have achieved this level of precision without the expertise of Carter Ryden, someone who understands that legacy isn't about a name on a door. It's about the systems you leave behind." The room clapped. I kept my hands folded. My father stared straight ahead, jaw locked tight. Colby didn't clap. Afterward, a few old clients came over. Some offered congratulations. Others asked, point blank, "You consulting now full-time?" "I'm listening," I told them. And I was. But not for work. I was listening for the shift, the moment when people stopped associating Ryden and Company with strength and started remembering who the strength was. By the time dessert was served, I'd made more quiet alliances than Colby had handshakes. And by the time I left, I knew this for sure. The war wasn't coming. It had already started. They just hadn't realized they'd already lost. It came on a Sunday. Not a business day. Not after a press release. Just a quiet ring at 7:42 a.m. while I was pouring coffee in my kitchen. The name on the screen made my hand pause mid-pour. Dad. First call from him since the day he handed Colby the throne and told me, flatly, I wasn't fit to lead. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "Carter," he said. No hello. No small talk. Just my name like he'd been rehearsing it. I waited. He sighed. The kind of tired exhale that means something's gone wrong and there's no way to spin it anymore. "We've hit some difficulties." "Yeah," I said. "I've heard." Silence. He cleared his throat. "The Southridge project is stalled. We're hemorrhaging cash on the Kellerman build. Clients are pulling contracts. And your brother..." Another pause. "Colby's not adapting as we hoped." I didn't say anything. Just let him sit in it. "I should have spoken to you sooner." "Probably." Another beat of silence. Then the words I never thought I'd hear from him. We need you back. Not want. Not miss. Need. I sipped my coffee. You made your decision, I said evenly. You wanted new leadership. Fresh direction. I gave it to you. His voice dropped. I didn't realize what I had. Now that landed. I didn't feel giddy. I didn't feel smug. I felt tired. Tired of giving everything and being seen as a placeholder until someone flashier came along. But I wasn't that man anymore. And if he really wanted me back, it wasn't going to be on old terms. I told him I'd think about it. But we both knew the truth already. If I returned, it would be as an equal, or not at all. I didn't make him wait long. 2 days after the call, I emailed him a list. It wasn't long. It didn't need to be. Just 5 bullet points, each one short and impossible to misread. Co-ownership, 50/50ths. In writing, full operational control of all active sites. Limited workweek. I choose my hours. Implementation of my systems across the company, no exceptions. Public acknowledgement on record that I was and have always been the real leadership. I ended the message with a single line. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. He didn't reply right away. I figured he'd want to chew on it. Maybe call Colby, maybe consult an attorney, maybe just sit in his office and stare at the wall where the old company photo still hung. The one where I'm standing dead center, holding the award we won for the Lincoln Tower project. The award Colby had tried to take credit for in every interview afterward. By Thursday, I got a reply. Come to the office tomorrow. Let's talk. When I arrived, the energy had shifted. The receptionist didn't make eye contact. A junior estimator I used to mentor looked like he wanted to say something, then didn't. Dad was already in the conference room. Alone this time. He stood when I walked in. Old habit. Respect. I've reviewed your terms, he said. And, he nodded once. You're right. It wasn't a speech. There were no justifications. No excuses. Just a man finally realizing the foundation was never the building. It was the beam he never looked at twice. We shook hands. And just like that, I was back. Not as the dutiful son. Not as the fallback. But as a partner. The kind of return that doesn't come with trumpets, just quiet clarity. The kind that changes everything. Walking back into the Ryden and Company office wasn't triumphant. It wasn't dramatic either. It was surgical. The same way you'd walk into a house with cracked foundation beams, you don't strut, you don't pose. You assess. You listen. You fix. The first day back, I didn't go to my old office. Colby had taken it, of course. Made it his own. Glass desk. A giant whiteboard filled with half-slogans and buzzwords he'd probably picked up off LinkedIn. I let him keep it. I claimed the empty office across the hall. Smaller, quieter, but with a direct view of the floor. That's what mattered. I spent the first week just watching, asking questions, meeting with team leads who hadn't had a real conversation with leadership since I left, reviewing project dashboards that made zero structural sense. Turns out Colby's digital tools didn't sync with our procurement schedules, or our subcontractor invoices, or even the inspection timelines. One assistant quietly admitted they'd been printing PDFs from Slate, my old system, behind his back, just to keep the projects moving. That was the moment I knew we were still salvageable. So I rolled up my sleeves. I reinstated the weekly team huddle. I restructured vendor communication flow. I called back 2 supervisors who'd left in frustration, both of whom returned within a day. And most importantly, I re-implemented Slate across every active project. Within 3 weeks, delays dropped by 40%. Client satisfaction scores, yeah, we tracked those, started climbing again. One city inspector even called us surprisingly professional this month. Colby didn't say much. He showed up late, left early, kept to his office. I didn't chase him, because I wasn't here to mend egos. I was here to rebuild a company, one that ran on structure, not showmanship. And for the first time in a long time, Ryden and Company was starting to look like a business again. Not a legacy, not a dynasty, just a well-run machine. 3 months in, the company was stable again. We'd caught the bleeding projects, repaired client relationships Colby had nearly torched, Cleaned up the accounting mess so thoroughly even Jen, who'd seen 2 decades of budget disasters, said it's starting to feel like the old days. Only this time it wasn't the old days. Because now, the people who mattered weren't looking to Colby for answers. They were looking to me. The shift wasn't loud. It was quiet, but complete. Field leads came straight to my door. Senior clients requested me personally. Even the office interns started calling me Mr. Ryden with a tone I hadn't heard since before the betrayal. And my father? He stopped calling meetings without me. He started asking instead of telling. At first, he'd hover awkwardly outside my door. Clear his throat. Got a sec. I always said yes. Not because I forgot what he did, but because I was done needing him to say sorry out loud. Then one Friday afternoon it happened. He came in, closed the door. I saw the new Folsom bid, he said, tapping the folder in his hand. Tight, precise, confident. I nodded once. That's the goal. He looked at me for a long moment. Not defensive, not guarded. Just seeing me. You were always the leader, he said quietly. I just didn't see it. I didn't answer right away, because part of me didn't need to. And another part of me, the one who'd walked out of this office months ago without yelling, without pleading, finally felt still. Thanks, I said. That was it. 2 syllables. But they landed like concrete. Because I didn't come back to be rescued. I came back because I'd earned the right to define what leadership looks like. Not through speeches. Through structure. Through presence. Through every quiet, deliberate decision I made while no one was watching. The reckoning had already happened. This was just the acknowledgement. He didn't quit. That would have taken self-awareness. Instead, Colby just started fading. Showed up later. Stopped returning calls. Missed 2 client dinners back-to-back, the kind that would have had me running spreadsheets from the car 5 years ago. When we passed in the hallway, he'd nod like we were casual colleagues, like the whole stealing the company thing had been a scheduling mix-up. I never confronted him. Never asked why. I didn't need to, because the truth was Colby wasn't built for this. He liked the idea of being in charge, not the weight of it. The grind. The hundreds of decisions no one sees, the ones that don't fit on a whiteboard or sound sexy in a TED Talk. Real leadership isn't about charisma. It's about consistency. About showing up when the work's boring, when the weather's bad, when everyone else is looking for someone to blame. He never got that. He thought it was about energy, vision, next-gen strategy. I thought about the time he pitched a project redesign to a client without checking the soil grade. Ended up pushing $1 million delay into our margins. Or the time he promised a delivery date that ignored every step in the permitting process. He meant well. But this wasn't a startup. It was a scaffolding of lives, crew members, vendors, office staff, all counting on this place to work. And if you don't respect that, it'll bury you. So I let him fade. And when he finally sent the email, a short paragraph about stepping back to explore new ventures, I didn't say anything. No handshake. No send-off. No hard feelings. Just an empty office and a company finally breathing again. Somewhere along the way, Ryden and company stopped being about who ran it. And started being about how we ran it. And I could live with that, because it meant we were finally building something that would last. There's a photo in the break room, one nobody really noticed until recently. It's from a decade ago. I'm in a hard hat, holding blueprints, standing ankle-deep in mud on the Bryant job site. There's no speech, no spotlight. Just work boots, rain in the background, and about 50 pounds of stress in my posture. Someone taped a sticky note next to it last week. The real Ryden. I didn't put it there. That kind of quiet recognition? It means more than any framed award or staged handshake. Because here's what matters. We didn't just recover. We rebuilt. Clients came back. Projects leveled out. Teams that had scattered started returning, not out of loyalty to a name, but to the way we work now. Structured. Clear. Fair. I walked through the Northbridge site last Friday. Everything ran like clockwork because Slate was humming beneath it, every beam and bolt scheduled down to the hour. A new junior foreman asked how long I'd been running things. Longer than they ever realized, I told him. And it hit me, for the first time in years, I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Colby. Not even at my father. Because it wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about restoring what I'd spent a decade pouring into this place. My time. My knowledge. My sense of right and wrong. It was about showing them, and maybe even myself, that walking away hadn't been weakness. It had been a warning. And when they didn't listen, I didn't burn the house down. I just took the nails with me. So when I came back, we could rebuild it the right way. My way. I didn't come back to be the hero. I came back to finish the work I started and to make sure no one else tried to dismantle it again. The company's steady now. Profitable. Respected. And this time, no one's confused about why. Colby's out. Dad shows up less, says more with fewer words. The team? They look to me. Not because I asked. Because I proved it day in, day out. I built the foundation. They tried to replace the frame. And when it all cracked, I didn't scream. I just showed them who held the blueprint. And this time, I'm not handing it over.